Hello and welcome to this session in which we will discuss the payment card industry data security standard known as PCI DSS. I will be referring to it as PCI. PCI is a set of security standards and guidelines for what purpose? To make sure the secure handling of payment card information. I'm sure you know that most sales online, not most, 100%, all of it online, are done through a credit card. Therefore, your information is exposed to cyber criminals. The merchant's information data is also exposed to cyber criminals. Therefore, what happens is we have certain guidelines that we have to meet as merchant in order to do what? To protect the data of our customers, to protect our data as a merchant, because we want to conduct business. Now, why is this topic covered on the CPA exam? Well, think about it. For some companies, all the revenue is through credit card. So if you want to test the revenue cycle, you want to make sure the tools to generate revenue, which is their credit card application, is secure. That's one thing. Also, those guidelines are created to protect the sensitive information of the users. So if you are not comfortable putting your information online with a merchant, then you're not going to be making that purchase. In other words, the business would lose sales. Therefore, you need to protect the sensitive information, such as credit card numbers, cardholder information, from being compromised by cyber criminals. Now, PSI is not a law. Well, if it's not a law, it means it does not have any teeth. But it's a requirement imposed by major credit card companies. In other words, if you want to accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, and JCB, you have to be in compliance with these standards. Otherwise, you can't accept credit card sales. In other words, you would lose sales. In other words, you'll be at a competitive disadvantage. And although it's not a law, it has teeth. From what perspective? If we think about the GDRP. What is the GDRP? If you want to do any business in Europe or have European customers, the GDRP is the General Data Protection Regulation. Then you have to be in compliance. Otherwise, you will be fined, and the fine could be up to millions of dollars. So that's why you want to be in compliance, because you want to protect your customers' data. Under the GDRP, well, you pay a fine, which is you don't want to do that. And we discussed the GDRP in a separate recording. In this session, we would look at the goals and requirement of the PCI in order to be in compliance. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we proceed any further, I have a public announcement about my company, FarhatLectures.com. Farhat Accounting Lectures is a supplemental educational tool that's going to help you with your CPA exam preparation as well as your accounting courses. My CPA material is aligned with your CPA review course such as Becker, Roger, Wiley, Gleam, Miles. My accounting courses are aligned with your accounting courses, broken down by chapter and topics. My resources consist of lectures, multiple choice questions, true-false questions, as well as exercises. Go ahead, start your free trial today. So the PCI has 6 goals, in which under those 6 goals there are 12 requirements. In other words, these standards has 6 overreaching goals. So they want to meet each goal, and each goal is supported by 12 specific standard requirement. Now bear in mind, although we're talking about 12 specific requirements, in the real world, those requirements have many sub-requirements, hundreds of them. The goal here is to give you an idea. As a future accountant, as a future CPA, as a business owner, you want to be familiar with the major idea of this PCI. So those requirements are designed to help organization do what? Secure payment. That's what you want to do. You want to make sure your customers are comfortable. They trust if they gave you this information, whether it's in transit or it's resting at your business place in your database, it's protected from data breaches. And what is data breaches? We have a separate recording about this, is when someone else accesses this data, obviously without your consent or the business consent. And there are 6 goals, and what I'm gonna do in this session, look at each goal, give an example, and show you the 12 requirements associated with each goal. Let's go ahead and get started with the first goal. The first goal is to do what? Build and maintain a secure network and system. Well, what does that mean? Requirement 1, this is the goal. Install and maintain a firewall. To do what? To protect cardholder information data. So this goal is to do what? aim to establish a strong network of defense. You should have a well-designed network architecture that includes firewalls to control the flow of traffic between their internal network and external internet. So when customers give you this information, that information is protected. An example will be, it should be configured to permit, the firewall should be configured to permit only necessary traffic while blocking unauthorized access. Now again, in a separate recording, we'll talk about firewalls. Firewalls is important as part of the CPA exam. So just know that the firewall protect the incoming and outgoing traffic. Requirement 2 under goal 1 is do not use vendor supplied default password and other security parameters, because when that payment system when the vendor provide you the network, they're gonna give you default password. Change them. Why? Because the people that works there know what they are, and they are basically default common, so you want to change them. So using default setting and configuration provided by the vendor can create vulnerability. So we want to kind of avoid this. To meet this requirement, you must change the password. How hard is that? Also use strong authentication mechanism and customize security parameters to enhance your own security system. Because what they're giving you is the default setup. You have to take this default setup and change it to your own need in order to protect your data. That's the first goal. The second goal, protect cardholder data. You have to do that. How? Well, this goal focuses on safeguarding sensitive cardholder data, their credit card information, their name, their addresses, their email. It requires you as an organization to use strong encryption and cryptographic techniques. What does that mean? And we'll have a session about encryption, but simply put, even if someone accesses the data, they cannot read it. So firewall is to protect you from someone accessing the data. Let's assume they penetrate this firewall and they access the data is encrypted. Therefore, they cannot read it. Therefore, if they access your credit card information, it's unreadable. So unauthorized access occurs, but no harm is done. Now you need to encrypt the transmission of data. This is when the data is at rest in your database. Now, the encryption transmission of cardholder across open public network. When someone buys from you, well, they have to submit this information online. That's a public network. You want to make sure that information is protected in transit. So at rest, it's protected. In transit is protected. And this is where the encryption is even more important, because on an open network, anyone can enter, not anyone, with a little bit of effort, a hacker can intercept this information. If they intercept it, it's encrypted. And if you don't know what encryption is, just know that they cannot read it. We have a separate recording about encryption later on. So you want to make sure you have secure communication protocols like TLS should be used to encrypt the data. Don't worry. Once you learn about encryption, you would learn about TLS. Goal 3, maintain a vulnerability management program. What does that mean? It means protect all systems against malware and regular update antivirus software and program. You just don't set up your system and you forget about it. You maintain, update your system, update your malware, antivirus, update your system against malware, and antivirus software is constantly updated. So the goal is to address the need to defend against malware and viruses, malicious software. So you should deploy antivirus solutions, update them on a regular basis, conduct scans, and to remove malware. Part of this goal is to develop and maintain a secure system and application. Well, to minimize vulnerabilities, organization must design and develop their system and application securely. It's protected by password, by different things. This include applying security patches, implement security coding practices, conducting regular security assessment, so on and so forth. Goal 4, implement strong access control measures. Here we're talking about physical measure, restrict access to cardholder data by business need to know only. So don't let anyone access this information. Access to cardholder data should be limited to individuals who require this data to do their work. Otherwise, you can't. So here you have to use what's called role-based access control. Authenticate those individuals, make sure that they are the individual who are supposed to be, and authorization mechanism. They're supposed to access only what they're supposed to access. Remember, we talked about authentication and authorization. Those are two different things. And role-based mean only the people who are supposed to have the data will have the data. Restrict the access. Identify and authenticate access to system component. Remember we talked about authentication. How do you authenticate? Well, identify the individuals before granting them access. Like what? Multi-factor authentication. For example, they input the password, the login and the password, then they receive a code on their cell phone, which is a separate piece of hardware where they look up an additional code and they put the code. So they get the code from the cell phone. So even if someone stolen their password, they still need their cell number or some other form of a third identification. For example, you can send them a code to their email, or they can carry a token in their hand where it's constantly changing. For example, I'll give you an example about my system. Every time I try to log into my system, Farhat Lectures, I input my password, then I have what's called an authentication application, and I have to open this application. It's on my cell phone. I'm not going to tell you the name of it because I don't want you to know even the name of it. And they will give me a code. Then I will input the code in addition to my login and password. This is a multi-factor authentication. On a regular basis, monitor and test the network. Well, one thing, restrict physical access to not only logical access, also physical access. Restricted area. In other words, don't give people access to the actual server where that information is located, or hardware. Physical access to system and data storage should be restricted. We're talking about locks, card readers, surveillance camera may be used to secure physical access points. Also, you need to track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. You just don't only have a camera, monitor that camera. You don't only have locks, make sure the locks are working, that no one broke into them. This goal involved implementing comprehensive login and monitoring system. We need to know who got in, for what purpose, just to keep monitoring and tracking everything that's going on. We need to track and analyze access to detect any suspicious activities, investigate security incident, and generate audit trails. Audit trails means you can always go back and see who went in. And suspicious activities, let's assume someone is logging into the system or accessing an area outside the business hour. Well, that should raise a red flag. Goal 6, maintain an information security policy. Well, requirement, test security system and process on a regular basis, periodically. Test your security measures through activities like penetration testing and vulnerability scanning. If you don't know what these are, you're trying to break into your own system, and we'll talk about those in a separate session. This helps identify weaknesses that need to be addressed. And this is how you know where your weak spots are, and you patch them, you update them. And maintain a policy that addresses information security for all personnel. Well, this goal is to do what? Require organization to establish and communicate an information security policy to all employees and contractors. So all employees should be aware of what they cannot do, what are the security policies, as well as contractor, third party, because they have access to your system. They should outline the responsibilities, let them know about the best practices, what should you do, what you should not do, and security awareness program. Be careful because if you do this, we could be vulnerable. If you download any software from the internet, that could make us vulnerable. So you just let them know, awareness, let them know through training. Let's take a look at a multiple choice questions from Farhat Lectures to help us understand this concept. A retail company is setting up an online store to accept credit card payments. Of course, if you're an online company, that's the only payment system you have anyway. What is the primary goal of the PCI DSS requirement that involve installing and maintaining a firewall configuration? So the question is, what's the purpose of a firewall configuration in a PCI DSS system? Well, let's start with A. To encrypt credit card information, to encrypt credit card data during transmission. Is this the purpose of the firewall? Well, you want to encrypt credit card information during transmission, but this is when the customer is communicating with your company. This is during transmission. Is this the purpose of the firewall? No, during transmission, it's good to encrypt the data, but that's not the purpose of the firewall. Therefore, A is out. So A is a correct answer, but not for the question that we are asking. You need to encrypt your data during transmission. Encrypting means no one can read the data in case it was intercepted, but that's not the firewall configuration. B, to protect stored cardholder data. Is the purpose of the firewall is to protect data from intruders, from data breaches? Yes, that's one of the purpose of the firewall. So this is a good answer, but let's wait on that. Let's wait. To conduct regular vulnerability assessment. Well, yes, you want to conduct vulnerable assessment, but that's not basically part of the PSI firewall requirement. To implement strong access control, yes, you want to have strong access control. That's fine too, are important, but that's not the primary goal of the firewall requirement. The firewall requirement is to protect the stored cardholder data, not access control, not strong access control. Strong access control will be strengthened through authentication and authorization. So this is what you would need to do to learn this topic better. Go to Farhat Lectures, work additional MCQs. That's going to help you understand this topic better. Invest in yourself. The CPA exam is 20 to 30 year investment in your career. Don't shortchange yourself. Good luck, study hard, and of course, stay safe.